Want an hour of fun facts? Then subscribe to Zarpado and let's start. NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission launched in 2016, reached the asteroid Bennu, collected samples, and brought them back to Earth on September 24th of 2023, completing a 7-year journey. It returned about 4.23 ounces of material, the largest haul from an asteroid to date, and organic compounds, sugars, and other chemical building blocks have been found in those rocks, helping us understand how life could have arisen on Earth. Coconut oil became a star in the 20th century. It went from being something you'd find in health food stores to being used in healthy recipes, bulletproof coffee, skincare routines, and hair masks. Its fame rested on the idea of being natural, although many nutritionists later qualified its supposed benefits due to its high saturated fat content. Colin Firth won the Oscar in 2011 for The King's Speech, where he played George VI, learning to speak in public just as the United Kingdom entered World War II. The film shows how radio transformed the king's voice into a real political tool, so his stammer was not just a personal problem, but a matter of state. The March 11, 2011 earthquake in Japan had a magnitude of 9.0, generated a tsunami that devastated more than 193 square miles of coastline, left nearly 19,500 dead, and caused the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident, classified as level 7, the highest on the international nuclear event scale. This combination changed the energy policies of several countries and reignited the global debate on nuclear energy. In 2010, Catherine Bigelow became the first woman to win the Oscar for Best Director for The Hurt Locker, a low-budget war film that beat Avatar, directed by her ex-husband James Cameron, and which became the highest-grossing film of the moment on the same night. The message was clear. You don't need the biggest budget in the world to make history. Australian Ian Thorpe, a multiple Olympic champion nicknamed Torpedo, announced his retirement in 2006 at just 24 years old. He had dominated the about 219-yard and about 437-yard freestyle and could have won more medals, so his early departure left swimming without one of its most dominant figures at his peak. The 2012 expedition to the bottom of the Mariana Trench with the Deep Sea Challenger submersible allowed scientists to film and measure conditions at a depth of almost 36,089 feet. In an environment of brutal pressures and total darkness, organisms adapted to the extreme were found, reinforcing the idea that life can arise and persist in places that previously seemed impossible. Google Plus was launched in 2011 as Google's attempt to compete with Facebook by introducing ideas like circles to separate friends, work, and family. Despite integrating the service with YouTube and other Google platforms, it never achieved massive traction and ended up shutting down, serving as an example that even giants can't force a social network if people don't want to move. The 2015 film Spotlight won the Oscar for Best Picture for its almost documentary-like portrayal of a team of journalists uncovering a case of systematic abuse in the church. It showed how slow, data-obsessed investigative journalism can still bring about real change in enormous institutions. The Kepler mission, launched in 2009, spent almost 10 years observing a small patch of sky and ended up discovering more than 2,600 confirmed exoplanets. Thanks to that work, we now know that there are thousands of worlds outside the solar system and that the total number of confirmed exoplanets is already around 6,000, with many more candidates on the waiting list. The New Horizons mission was launched in 2006, and in July 2015 became the first spacecraft to fly by Pluto, passing within about 7,767 miles of the dwarf planet and sending back images of ice mountains, icy plains, and that famous bright heart on its surface. It then continued its journey, flying by the Kuiper Belt object Arrokoth in 2019. The rise of plant-based foods after 2015, with products like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods, didn't just target vegans. It sought to win over meat eaters with burgers that mimic the texture and flavor of meat using plant proteins, dyes that imitate blood, and campaigns focused on reducing emissions, animal suffering, and health risks. Kate Winslet won the Oscar in 2009 for The Reader after several previous nominations for films such as Titanic and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That role, in which she plays an illiterate former Nazi guard, also earned her a Golden Globe and a BAFTA, ending a streak of years in which she was always nominated but never won. Eliud Kipchoge broke the world marathon record in Berlin in 2018 with a time of 2:01:39, lowering the previous mark by 1 minute and 18 seconds. The biggest improvement in a marathon record since the 1960s. He would later break his own record again and go under 2 hours in a controlled experiment, cementing his reputation as the fastest man in the world over 26.2 miles. The film Argo tells the story of one of those CIA plans that seem invented by screenwriters who'd had too much coffee, pretending to film a science fiction movie in Iran to smuggle 6 diplomats out undercover during the hostage crisis. The best part is that this crazy scheme was based on the Canadian Caper, a real operation where diplomats pose as a Canadian film crew. And the plan worked so well that years later, Hollywood awarded it the Oscar for Best Picture. Landon Donovan wasn't just good to be American. He became the all-time leading scorer and assist provider for the U.S. national team, with 57 goals and 58 assists, something like being both number 10 and number 9 at the same time. Furthermore, in the 2002 World Cup, the first played in Asia, he won the Best Young Player award while Brazil lifted their 5th title and Ronaldo dominated with 8 goals. The Asoho Space Observatory launched in 1995 with the idea of spending only 2 years looking at the sun, and for decades it has become the official watchdog of our star. It has not only changed the way we understand the solar atmosphere and the solar wind, but it is also a key tool for anticipating solar storms that can fry satellites, affect power grids, and even divert flights, becoming a kind of weather service for space. The concept of gaslighting originated in classic cinema, specifically the 1944 film Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife to the point of making her doubt her own sanity. Decades later, the word entered the field of psychology to describe a type of abuse in which you are made to believe that what you see or feel is all in your head. Derrick Rose was so good, so fast, that at 22, he was already the youngest MVP in NBA history, leading a Bulls team to 62 wins with a style of play that resembled a music video of impossible dunks and changes of pace. Years later, injuries hampered his career, but his impact was such that in 2025, Chicago announced it would retire his #1 jersey, placing him in the same hallowed group as Jordan and Pippen within the franchise. Elevated comfort food took classic dishes like mashed potatoes, stew, and mac and cheese, and put them through the filter of haute cuisine. Truffle mashed potatoes with brown butter, stews made with dry-aged beef, burgers with sourdough buns, and artisanal cheeses. The trick is to maintain the emotional embrace of the original dish while adding technique, premium ingredients, and presentations that look Instagram-ready. The weekend transformed the 2021 Super Bowl halftime show into a live music video. A labyrinth of lights and mirrors, dancers with bandages on their faces, and a visual narrative that connected with the aesthetic of his music videos. To achieve this, he personally invested an additional $7 million on top of the official budget, making his performance one of the most expensive in history and a meme factory, with that famous scene of the camera following him as he gets lost among illuminated corridors. Coco not only made half the planet cry, it was the first animated blockbuster with an entirely Latino main cast and such a meticulous recreation of the Day of the Dead that the Mexican public embraced it as their own. The film grossed over $800 million, became the highest-grossing film in Mexican history during its opening weekend, and won 2 Oscars. In 2025, Disney and Pixar confirmed they were already working on Coco 2. The Copenhagen restaurant Noma transformed what were once considered forest herbs, mosses, wild shoots, and icy water shellfish into haute cuisine dishes, popularizing modern Nordic cuisine and the concept of foraging. Its success as best restaurant in the world in multiple rankings sparked a global trend of foraging for wild ingredients, to the point that years later, criticism arose about the risk of overexploiting ecosystems, and people began to talk about moving from everything foraged to a more responsible model that also values local agriculture. The Glastonbury Festival is essentially a city that appears and disappears on an English farm. Over 200,000 people camping among relocated cows, 1,000 acres of land transformed into a labyrinth of stages, bars, and circus tents. Three-dimensional laser mapping of caves is turning places impossible to see in their entirety into digital models with millimeter precision. Projects using LiDAR scanners have performed hundreds of scans on enormous systems, generating point clouds that recreate passageways, vaults, and underground chambers. These models are then used to study how the cave formed, how bat colonies move, and much more. The ramen burger was born in 2013 in a Brooklyn market thanks to chef Keiso Shimamoto, who combined a beef patty with 2 buns made of fried ramen noodles and a shoyu-style sauce. The result was so unusual and photogenic that lines grew so long and the media crowned it the new cronut. Adele had such a phenomenal night at the 2012 Grammys that she earned the nickname Adele Rolls in the Gold. She took home 6 gramophones in a single night, including Album of the Year for 21 and Record and Song of the Year for Rolling in the Deep. All this after undergoing vocal cord surgery a few months prior. Zoom went from being that weird meeting app to becoming a classroom, office, and family birthday party all at once. In December 2019, it had around 10 million daily participants, and by April 2020, it had surpassed 300 million daily participants, a 30-fold increase in just 3 months. The Japanese probe Hayabusa did something that sounds like science fiction. It traveled to the tiny asteroid Itokawa, landed, collected microscopic dust particles, and returned to Earth in 2010. Those specks, barely 1,500 grains of regolith, became a scientific treasure because they are the first asteroid material brought home and help reconstruct how the solar system formed billions of years ago. Matthew McConaughey had to lose almost 44 pounds and completely transform his Beach Boy image to play Ron Woodruff in Dallas Buyers Club. His gaunt physique and the true story of a patient fighting the healthcare system during the HIV crisis earned him an Oscar in 2014 and marked the definitive turning point in his career, the famous McConaissance, where he went from romantic comedies to intense and dark roles. The 2005 Kashmir earthquake was so devastating that it changed the human map of the region in just 1 minute. A magnitude 7.6 quake shook northern Pakistan and parts of India and Afghanistan, leaving between 74,000 and nearly 90,000 dead and some 2.8 million people homeless. Israeli cuisine leapt from the homes and markets of Tel Aviv to become the new trendy cuisine in cities like New York and London. Humble dishes like hummus, falafel, and shakshuka began to be served with haute cuisine presentations, blending Jewish, Arab, and Mediterranean traditions. The case of Lance Armstrong is almost a modern sporting tragedy. He went from being a symbol of overcoming cancer and a 7-time Tour de France champion to losing all his titles when the U.S. anti-doping agency uncovered an organized doping system within his team. In 2012, he received a lifetime ban and the annulment of all his results since 1998, becoming one of the most extreme examples of how doping can rewrite the history of a sport. Saturn's moon Enceladus appeared to be a simple ball of ice until the Cassini probe detected geysers of water erupting from its south pole in 2005. This revealed a liquid ocean hidden beneath miles of ice. Subsequent analyses found salts, hydrogen, and complex organic molecules in these jets' ingredients that on Earth are associated with hydrothermal activity and, potentially, life. Today, Enceladus is on the short list of places in the solar system that are candidates for harboring life. Russell Crowe not only won the Oscar for Gladiator in 2001, but throughout filming, he fought to ensure that his character, Maximus, remained a man obsessed with the memory of his murdered family and not a generic action hero filled with sex scenes. Years later, Crowe himself criticized the sequel Gladiator II because according to him, it betrays the moral core that made the original story of the general turned slave and then Colosseum legend so powerful. The Sinabung volcano in Indonesia lay almost dormant for centuries before suddenly erupting with fury in the 2010s. In just 1 week in 2014, it experienced more than 200 eruptions, spewing columns of ash and pyroclastic flows that forced the evacuation of more than 20,000 people and caused several deaths. The cronut, invented in 2013 by chef Dominique Ancel in New York, transformed a simple breakfast into an event, a fried and filled croissant donut hybrid. The craze was such that people lined up as early as 3 a.m. to get one, with wait times of up to 5 hours. And the idea was copied by bakeries around the world with all sorts of hybrids. SpaceX's Starhopper spacecraft looked like a water tank on legs. But its small hops in 2019 were the acid test for the Raptor engines and the fully reusable flight philosophy that would later be used in Starship. One of its most famous flights was a hop of about 492 feet in Boca Chica, Texas, where it took off, hovered, and landed upright, showing that the idea of rockets landing like science fiction could become routine. In 2005, the NHL decided that ties no longer provided enough excitement and added the shootout at the end of overtime in the regular season. 3 players from each team face off against the goalie, and if the score is still tied, it goes to sudden death. In one fell swoop, ice hockey gained much more spectacular finals for television and fans. Cyclone Sidr, which struck Bangladesh in November 2007, reached Category 5 with winds of around 162 miles per hour and a storm surge that devastated entire villages. It left approximately 3,400 dead and caused more than $2.3 billion in damage. Even so, mass evacuations in the natural barrier of the Sundarbans mangrove forest prevented the tragedy from being even worse. The 2003 Rugby World Cup final was decided by one of those moments that are etched in your memory. England and Australia were tied 17-17 in extra time, when with just seconds remaining, Johnny Wilkinson lined up his left foot and buried a perfect drop goal. That 20-17 victory not only gave England their first World Cup, but also turned that technical feat into an eternal highlight reel. Dishes like banh mi and Vietnamese noodle bowls became food truck stars in the 2010s. A baguette-like bread inherited from French colonization, but filled with marinated pork, cilantro, pickles, and bold sauces, or enormous bowls where fresh herbs, spiced broth, and grilled meat mingle. The appeal lies in the fact that they are inexpensive, photogenic, and customizable. To portray June Carter Cash in Walk the Line, Reese Witherspoon didn't just act. She sang all the songs herself and spent months learning to play instruments and imitate the real June stage mannerisms. This obsessive work earned her an Oscar in 2006 and resulted in one of the few musical biopics where the lead duo, with Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash, sounds and behaves like a real band, not like dubbed actors. The Big Island of Hawaii literally keeps growing because the Kilauea volcano has been sending lava into the ocean for decades. Its 2018 eruptions opened dozens of fissures, destroyed thousands of homes, and created new deltas of solidified lava upon contact with water, adding land to the island's map. The Salt Cathedral of Zipaquira is literally a church carved 591 feet underground, inside a salt mine. In 2007, after a national vote, the Colombian Congress declared it the first wonder of Colombia, and today it receives around 600,000 visitors a year, who walk through tunnels illuminated in blue and violet light until they reach a gigantic ship carved from salt rock, with crosses and sculptures that seem otherworldly. Glass frogs from the Centrolinidae family became famous because their bellies are so transparent that, if you look at them from below, you can see their beating heart, liver, and intestines as if they were a living anatomical model. Some species even play with their own blood. When they rest, they hide their red blood cells in special organs to become less visible to predators, a trick that intrigues biologists who study camouflage and circulation. The Atacama Desert in Chile is so dry and extreme that NASA uses it as a testing ground for missions to Mars. Projects like ARADS have sent rovers equipped with drills and life detection equipment to practice drilling into the subsurface and analyzing samples for biological traces, just as will be done on the Red Planet. If an instrument works in the saline, ultra-dry, UV-damaged soil of the Atacama Desert, it has a good chance of working on Mars. The 2007 film No Country for Old Men is famous for what it almost lacks: music and dialogue. There are entire chase scenes and tense moments in complete silence, and yet it won Oscars for Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay, and Supporting Actor for Javier Bardem for his portrayal of the assassin with the impossible hairstyle. The TESS mission, launched in 2018, is dedicated to observing minute variations in brightness across millions of stars to detect planets passing in front of them. By mid-2025, TESS had already generated thousands of candidates and helped confirm hundreds of exoplanets, contributing to a catalog that exceeded 6,000 known worlds outside our solar system, from gas giants to potentially temperate rocky planets. The South American giant otter, which can measure over 5.6 feet in length, was so heavily hunted for its fur in the 20th century that its populations collapsed. Today it is listed as endangered, and although commercial hunting has decreased, it remains threatened by riverbank destruction, pollution of Amazonian rivers, and competition for fish with human fisheries. The Qatar National Museum, inaugurated in Doha in 2019, resembles a mineral flower that has bloomed in the middle of the desert. Jean Nouvel designed it inspired by desert roses, gypsum crystals that form naturally in the region. The building is made up of interlocking discs that surround a central courtyard and tells the story of the country from its Bedouin origins to the age of gas and skyscrapers. Vietnamese coffee with condensed milk, called Cà phê Sua Ja, first conquered the corners of Hanoi and Saigon, and then specialty coffee shops around the world. It is prepared by letting the very strong coffee drip slowly over condensed milk and ice, creating a sweet and bitter explosion that has become emblematic of a country that is now the world's second largest coffee exporter. Bouvet Island is so remote that it's known as the most isolated island in the world, an ice-covered volcanic fragment in the middle of the South Atlantic, some 994 to 1,056 miles from Antarctica and more than 1,243 miles from any inhabited place. Norway uses it as a nature reserve and a base for scientific instrumentation. Chia and flax seeds went from being almost unknown ingredients to appearing in breads, yogurts, bowls, and even detox lemonades during the 2010s. Chia can absorb up to 10 to 12 times its weight in water, forming a fiber-rich gel and providing omega-3 fatty acids. And its global market's already worth billions of dollars, with double-digit growth rates according to recent projections. The vuvuzela at the 2010 South Africa World Cup wasn't just background noise. In the stadiums, it reached over 130 to 140 decibels, similar to having a jet engine or a gunshot next to your ear, prompting complaints from players, TV crews, and doctors about the risk of permanent hearing damage. Nevada's Fly Geyser looks like a portal to another planet, but it was born from human error. In the 1960s, a well was drilled, geothermal water escaped, and over decades, it deposited minerals that formed that psychedelic cone of green, red, and orange hues. It's located on a private ranch and measures only a few yards, but it became an Instagram superstar thanks to its fluorescent thermal pools. Ice cream mochi, that spherical popcorn of ice cream wrapped in elastic rice dough, made the leap to global fame in the 2010s. It went from being a niche dessert in Japanese neighborhoods in the US to filling the freezers of supermarkets and fast food chains. Its chewy texture, unusual flavors like green tea, lychee, and matcha with black sesame, and its photogenic appeal on social media made it the perfect snack for the Instagram era. The Danakil Desert in Ethiopia looks like the opening screen of a science fiction game. It's about 410 feet below sea level, one of the hottest inhabited places on the planet, and combines active volcanoes, lava lakes, and fluorescent-colored acidic pools that exceed 194 degrees Fahrenheit. Both scientists and extreme tourists use it as a dress rehearsal to imagine what it would be like to walk on Venus or Mars. The giant panda was reclassified from endangered to vulnerable on the IUCN Red List in 2016, following decades of bamboo reserves, biological corridors, and hunting controls in China. Today, there are an estimated 1,864 pandas in the wild, an increase of about 17% in a decade, and it has become the face of the idea that long-term conservation can work. It's no coincidence that it's been the WWF's iconic logo since 1961. Thai cuisine won the internet's World Championship of Flavor when, in a CNN ranking of the 50 most delicious dishes, Massaman curry came in first, with Tom Yum and Pad Thai also making the top 10. When the James Webb Space Telescope pointed at the pillars of creation in 2022, it transformed the nerdy 1990s teen poster into cosmic 4K. Its infrared camera revealed jets of red gas bursting from baby stars hidden within those dust plumes. And this was then combined with another image in mid-infrared to create a near three-dimensional map of the galaxy's most famous star nursery. New York's MoMA reopened in 2004, completely redesigned. Architect Yoshio Taniguchi expanded it to approximately 63,000 square feet, nearly double the previous space, with a 110-foot-high atrium that floods the galleries with natural light. The result was a museum designed for the 21st century, more fluid pathways, views of the sculpture garden, and enough room for contemporary art to breathe without feeling cramped. Formula One went hybrid before road cars. In 2009, it debuted KERS, a system that recovered braking energy and provided an extra 60 km almost 80 horsepower for 6 to 7 seconds per lap. That year, Lewis Hamilton won the Hungarian Grand Prix in a McLaren equipped with KERS, marking the first victory for a hybrid car in the category and paving the way for the era of today's hybrid engines. The polar bear is listed as vulnerable because it literally depends on sea ice to hunt seals. As the Arctic loses ice, the bears have to swim further, expend more energy, and find less food. Studies combining IUCN data and climate models project sharp declines in their populations this century if the ice continues to disappear at the current rate. The Dead Sea is evaporating at a brutal rate. Its level is dropping by about 3.3 feet per year and has already exposed areas where thousands of sinkholes are swallowing roads, beaches, and buildings, forcing the closure of tourist sites like Ein Gedi. Without a massive injection of fresh water, the loss is estimated to be on the order of about 35.3 billion cubic feet per year. Colombian coffee is more than just marketing, featuring a man named Juan Valdez. Since 2007, Café de Colombia has been registered as a protected geographical indication in the European Union, certifying that these beans come from specific regions of the Colombian Andes and maintain certain characteristics of flavor and quality. It is one of the few coffees in the world with this level of legal protection, which safeguards its reputation against imitations. NASA's Grail mission sent 2 twin probes, Ebb and Flow, to orbit the Moon, measuring minute changes in its speed to create the most accurate gravity map we have ever had of the satellite. That map showed, for example, that the crust of the highlands is less dense than previously thought and helped explain why the near and far sides are so different, with the former being much more volcanic. The Javan rhinoceros is playing hardcore mode. It is estimated that only around 70 to 80 individuals remain, all in a single national park in Indonesia, Ujung Kulon. After the last Vietnamese orangutan was hunted in 2010, every new birth is celebrated almost like a World Cup victory, while at the same time, every failed relocation attempt or natural death is a huge blow to the species. The Great Wall of China was remeasured using modern technology, and in 2012, China announced a staggering figure. Adding up all its sections, it measures approximately 13,167 miles, more than half the Earth's circumference. This number came from a 6-year archaeological survey that combined fieldwork and satellite positioning systems to track even the most eroded remains. The Tapanuli orangutan was only described as a new species in 2017, and to make matters worse, it was born into a critically endangered species. It is estimated that fewer than 800 individuals remain living in the Batang Toru ecosystem in Sumatra. It is the rarest great ape on the planet, with a lineage that diverged some 3.4 million years ago, and now faces deforestation, gold mining projects, and even recent disasters like massive flooding in the area. The inverted pyramid at the Louvre looks like something out of the Da Vinci Code, but it's real. A glass skylight designed by I.M. Pei was inaugurated in 1993 in the center of the underground Carrousel du Louvre shopping mall. The pyramid's tip hangs 4.6 feet above the ground and almost touches a small stone pyramid placed directly below, forming a kind of geometric kiss that is now a must-see for tourists and photographers. At the Grand Canyon, the skywalk is essentially walking on air, a glass horseshoe some 3,937 feet above the Colorado River, with a transparent floor about 2.4 inches thick, designed to support about 800 people at a time. It was built by the Hualapai tribe as a form of self-tourism, and the feeling is so strong that many people reach the edge and don't dare to look down. In Nepal, the Bengal tiger has made a comeback worthy of a documentary. From a mere 121 individuals in 2010, its population grew to approximately 355 adults in 2022 thanks to monitored national parks, biological corridors, and agreements with villages that coexist with the big cats. It is one of the most spectacular increases recorded for a large predator species in the 21st century. The National Gallery in London took advantage of the 2000s to give its Victorian rooms a facelift, restoring the original colors of ceilings and moldings, replacing all the lighting with LEDs, and improving temperature and humidity control. This allowed them to reduce energy consumption while simultaneously ensuring that the 500-year-old paintings look better and suffer less damage. Polynesian cuisine has made its way onto the foodie map thanks to dishes that seem simple but are steeped in history. Poi, for example, is that purple paste made by pounding taro, a staple of the ancient Hawaiian menu, as important as bread in other cultures. It was served at enormous luau feasts alongside underground smoked pork, kalua, lau wrapped in leaves, and desserts like kololo. Today you can find it everywhere, from tourist buffets to modern menus that treat it as a superfood ingredient. Tibet and the entire Himalayas are the third pole of the planet. There, nearly 70% of the plateau's water is stored as ice, feeding giants like the Ganges, the Yangtze, and the Mekong, and sustaining more than 1.4 billion people downstream. Haumea, an elongated dwarf planet spinning rapidly beyond Neptune, surprised scientists in 2017 when, during a stellar occultation, telescopes detected a ring. It is the first known dwarf planet with this jewel, aligned with its equator and close to a 3-to-1 resonance with its rotation, suggesting that rings could be much more common on small bodies than previously thought. Bubble tea originated in Taiwan in the 1980s, but it exploded globally in the 2010s. Taiwanese factories began exporting entire containers of tapioca pearls and syrups, while photos of giant pastel-colored cups went viral on social media. Today you can find it in almost any major city. The Iberian lynx was nearly extinct. In the early 2000s, fewer than 100 wild specimens remain on the entire peninsula. 2 decades of captive breeding, reintroductions, tunnels for them to cross roads, and protection of their main prey, the rabbit, led to a population exceeding 2,000 individuals in 2024, moving the species from critically endangered to vulnerable, one of the most spectacular rescues of a feline in recent history. Poutine originated in rural Quebec in the 1950s as a combination of French fries, cheese curds, and hot gravy, but today it has its own festival circuit. Poutine Week brings together more than 800 restaurants and hundreds of thousands of diners every February to sample versions with foie gras, curry, lobster, or even award-winning vegan options. What began as Quebec junk food has become a Canadian national symbol and a canvas for all kinds of culinary extravagance. The 2012 Tesla Model S was the, okay, electric cars are for real moment. A large sedan with batteries up to 85 kilowatts, an official range of around 264 miles, an acceleration that left combustion engine luxury sedans in the dust. Its arrival coincided with the surge in global EV sales, when people began to see that an electric car was no longer a strange city car, but something that could replace a high-end car and humiliate it at traffic lights. The kakapo, a nocturnal, plump, flightless parrot from New Zealand, was literally on the brink of extinction. In 1995, only 51 known individuals remained. Thanks to predator-free islands, 24/7 surveillance, advanced genetics, and even insemination techniques using special helmets to prevent romances with humans, the population grew to over 230 individuals and continues to grow, with each bird identified by name and capable of living almost 90 years. In Cologne Cathedral, one of the most modern surprises isn't in the Gothic towers, but in a window. In 2007, Gerhard Richter installed a stained glass window made up of 11,263 tiny squares of glass in 72 colors, like a giant pixel art piece covering 1,141 square feet. The work replaced panes destroyed in the war, caused controversy for being completely abstract, and ended up being one of the most popular photo opportunities for visitors. The fairy circles of the Namib Desert are like a glitch in nature, perfectly round patches devoid of vegetation, surrounded by rings of grass, which can range in size from a few yards to more than 98 feet. For years, termites or rare gases were blamed, but models suggest they are an example of vegetation's self-organization under extreme drought conditions, forming Turing-like patterns. The pistol shrimp seems harmless until it snaps its claw. It closes it so quickly that it creates a cavitation bubble, which upon collapsing reaches temperatures of several thousand degrees, comparable to the surface of the sun, and generates a sound that can exceed 200 decibels, louder than a gunshot. This mini cannon shot serves to stun prey and inspires studies on cavitation and new sonar technologies. Ferran Adrià transformed El Bulli into the most influential laboratory of modern cuisine. Foams, spheres, liquid nitrogen, and dishes that resembled chemistry experiments defined what later became known as molecular gastronomy. The restaurant earned 3 Michelin stars and was chosen 5 times as the best in the world before closing in 2011 to become a foundation and research center with a workshop dedicated solely to inventing techniques and menus of more than 30 courses per season. Whale sharks, the largest fish on the planet, ceased to be ghosts of the ocean when they began to be tagged with satellite transmitters in the early 2000s. This data revealed that some juveniles stay for weeks in certain areas like the Sea of Cortez or the Philippines, while others cross entire oceans. Key information for designing marine reserves and regulating tourism that swims inches away from these filter-feeding giants. NASA's MMS mission launched 4 identical spacecraft in 2015 that fly in a tetrahedral formation around Earth to pursue a nearly invisible phenomenon: magnetic reconnection. By measuring electric and magnetic fields and particles at extremely high resolution, MMS has managed to enter the very thin electron diffusion region, where field lines break and release energy that fuels auroras and geomagnetic storms, giving us for the first time a microscopic view of how space weather explodes. The red panda, that furry raccoon fox that looks like it was designed for plush toys, is an absolute internet star. But in the wild, the story is much harsher. The IUCN lists it as endangered, with fewer than 10,000 mature individuals in a declining population due to deforestation, road construction, and poaching in the Himalayan region in southwest China. The Taiwanese bao, that soft, steamed white bun, has jumped from street stalls to gourmet menus. The classic version contains glazed pork belly, pickles, crushed peanuts, and cilantro inside a kind of fluffy taco. Since the 2010s, chefs in New York, London, and São Paulo have been reinventing it with fried chicken, tofu, prawns, or tempura, and many food trucks offer it in flavor combos, like Oriental sushi sandwiches meant to be eaten with one hand and shared on social media. Cate Blanchett won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her portrayal of Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator, and she did so with such obsession that she watched 35 prints of Hepburn's first 15 films to copy her posture, voice, and gestures. She thus became the first person to win an Oscar for portraying another Oscar-winning actress, a Hollywood meta-achievement worthy of cinephile trivia. Sedna, a distant dwarf planet discovered in 2003, takes about 11,400 years to complete a single orbit around the Sun. Its orbit is so exaggeratedly elliptical that it reaches a distance of about 937 astronomical units, some 19 times farther than Pluto's orbit. Astronomers believe it could be part of the inner Oort cloud, and its unusual orbit fuels theories about unseen planets in the outer reaches of the solar system. The slow food movement was born in Italy in 1986, when Carlo Petrini organized a protest against the opening of a McDonald's near the Spanish Steps in Rome. It wasn't just anger against a hamburger, but against the idea that all cities end up eating exactly the same thing. The concept of a black swan jumped from the Australian lagoons to Wall Street with Nassim Taleb's book, The Black Swan. In 2007, it refers to extremely rare, unpredictable events with enormous impact, which we only later try to explain with simplistic narratives to make sense of it all. The Acropolis Museum in Athens, opened to the public in 2009, is literally built on top of original ruins. It has glass floors that reveal archaeological excavations beneath your feet, and a top floor aligned with the Parthenon to fractions of an inch, so that the sculptures face the actual temple on the hill. It displays more than 4,250 objects in about 1,695 square feet, and was also conceived as an architectural argument in the ongoing debate about the return of the Parthenon marbles. The turmeric golden latte went from an Ayurvedic home remedy to a hipster coffee shop staple around 2016. Milk blended with turmeric, black pepper, ginger, and cinnamon, served in a picture-perfect yellow cup. Google reported a more than 50% increase in searches for turmeric in just a few months, and many embraced it as a healthy alternative to coffee, though studies on its actual benefits still lag far behind the Instagram hype. The Yangtze River dolphin, known as the baiji, survived for some 20 million years in the murky waters of China's largest river, but couldn't withstand a few decades of river traffic, fishing nets, and pollution. In 2006, a 6-week expedition covered some 2,175 miles of the river with hydrophones and observation equipment and found no specimens, so the species was declared functionally extinct. Even if some individuals remained, there were no longer enough to recover a viable population. Avocado oil became fashionable in the 2010s as the high-tech cousin of olive oil. It is obtained from the pulp, is rich in monounsaturated fats and vitamin E, and has a very high smoke point, around 482 degrees Fahrenheit in its refined version, which makes it ideal for frying or stir-frying over high heat without burning too quickly. The African wild dog, also called the painted dog, is one of the most efficient hunters on the planet, capable of coordinating as a pack with strategies that seem straight out of a military manual. However, it is on the brink of extinction. It is estimated that only about 6,600 adults remain, of which only about 1,400 are mature individuals, scattered across a few dozen fragmented subpopulations. The Istanbul Modern Museum opened in December 2004 as Turkey's first modern and contemporary art museum, housed in an old port warehouse in the Karaköy area, overlooking the Bosphorus. Its opening coincided with the European Union summit, where Turkey's potential accession was being discussed, using the museum as a modern calling card for the country. 17,500 people visited it in its first week and around 500,000 in its first year. The axolotl, that amphibian emoji face that never completes its metamorphosis, is practically cornered in real life. Estimates range from 50 to 1,000 adults in the wild, almost all in the canals of Xochimilco in Mexico City. Urban sprawl filled in and polluted lakes. Invasive fish like tilapia and carp were introduced, which eat their eggs, and the water's becoming warmer due to climate change and urbanization, disrupting the balance of their habitat. The extension of Tate Modern in London, opened as Switch House in 2016, added 60% more exhibition space with a pyramidal brick tower designed by Herzog de Meuron. It's not just more rooms. There are floors dedicated to performance, immersive installations, educational spaces, and a panoramic terrace overlooking the Thames. Barringer Crater, also called Meteor Crater, is like an open-air laboratory for understanding what happens when a space rock strikes a planet. Located in Arizona, it measures about 0.75 miles in diameter and around 558 to 591 feet deep, and was formed about 50,000 years ago when an iron meteorite about 98 to 164 feet in diameter struck with such force that it excavated some 75 million tons of rock. It is one of the best preserved impact craters in the world. NASA's Stereo mission launched two identical spacecraft in 2006 and sent them orbiting the sun on opposite sides, like 3D cameras surrounding a campfire. Thanks to this stereoscopic view, scientists were able to see for the first time how coronal mass ejections swell and break off, improving the ability to anticipate solar storms that can fry satellites and power grids on Earth. The Oslo Opera House opened in 2008 with a design by the firm Snøhetta that literally invites you to walk on the roof, a white marble ramp that descends to the sea and transforms the building into a giant public square. Beneath this sloping surface lie halls with luxurious acoustics and a structure designed to withstand snow, ice, and the thousands of tourists who climb it every year just to take the photo, walking on the Opera House. The Brigadeiro originated in Brazil in the 1940s, using condensed milk, cocoa, and butter, when World War II rationing made more elaborate desserts difficult to obtain. It became so popular at parties that today there are specialized Brigadeiro shops that sell them in versions filled with pistachio, Nutella, or passion fruit, and in countries like the United States, they are offered as Brazilian truffles at weddings and high-end catering events. The NFT boom exploded in 2021 when Beeple's digital artwork, Every Day's the First 5,000 Days, sold for $69.3 million at Christie's, an unprecedented feat for a JPG file with a token on the blockchain. From then on, GIFs, tweets, and collections of generative images sold for millions of dollars. The Kia, an alpine parrot from New Zealand, surprised scientists when it demonstrated an understanding of probability, something previously only observed in great apes. In experiments, he chose the statistically most favorable option for obtaining food, in addition to solving puzzles as a team, while in real life he's famous for dismantling tourists' cars and stealing their food with the coordination of an organized gang. The Musée de la Civilisation de Québec became known for exhibitions that treat pop culture with the same seriousness as classical history. It has dedicated shows to Tintin, Quebec comics, and even facial recognition projects that find you a doppelganger in 2,000-year-old sculptures. Bibimbap, a Korean bowl of rice with stir-fried vegetables, meat, and spicy gochujang, went from being a home-cooked meal to a star dish of K-food thanks to the rise of K-pop and TV series. Today it appears on vegan menus, fast casual menus, and airline menus because it adapts easily. You can serve it on a hot stone, cold to go, or in a healthy version without losing that final moment of mixing everything together into a delicious chaos. Amazon Web Services started in 2006, offering two services that seem simple but change computing: S3 for cloud file storage and EC2 for renting servers by the hour. What previously required buying physical racks and setting up server rooms became a click in a web console, and this infrastructure as a service model ended up being the foundation for thousands of apps, startups, and streaming services that we use every day. The Messenger mission was the first to orbit Mercury in 2011, and contrary to what was expected of a planet so close to the Sun, confirmed that its perpetually shadowed craters contain deposits of water ice mixed with organic compounds. Furthermore, It revealed that Mercury had an intense volcanic past and that its magnetic field is offset to the north. Details that forced a rewriting of its history as a rocky world much more active than previously thought. The western chimpanzee, Pan troglodytes virus, was reclassified as critically endangered after studies showed that its population declined by more than 80% in just a few decades due to hunting, the pet trade, disease, and deforestation. Today it remains in only 8 West African countries, and its protection involves armed patrols, agreements with local communities, and even projects that genetically trace the origin of confiscated chimpanzees to dismantle trafficking networks. The acai bowl, made with the pulp of a small, antioxidant-rich Amazonian berry, went from being a surfer's breakfast in Brazil to becoming the Instagram breakfast. By 2020, it was already listed among the most viral foods of the decade. Combinations with granola, fruit, nut butters, and colorful toppings made it perfect for photos. Leonardo DiCaprio's The Revenant was filmed almost entirely with natural light in remote landscapes of Canada and Argentina, with temperatures reaching minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit and a crew that had to walk for hours carrying equipment on their shoulders to areas untouched by human activity. This artistic decision made the shoot famous for being almost a logistical nightmare. Days lost due to the weather, a ballooning budget, and a Leonardo DiCaprio who ended up sleeping in furs, wading into icy rivers, and eating raw liver on camera. Songdo in South Korea is a city built from scratch on 1,500 acres reclaimed from the sea. Conceived as a smart city laboratory, it has sensors that measure traffic and air quality, a pneumatic system that suctions garbage directly from buildings, and a network of parks and bike paths designed so that 90% of daily tasks are within a 15-minute walk or bike ride. However, despite the multi-million-dollar investment, the city has been criticized for feeling overly planned and cold, as if technology arrived before the daily lives of its inhabitants. In Japan, there is a rather strange snack called armpit onigiri. Young women shape the rice balls with their armpits, inspired by a scene from a famous manga. Although it may seem unhygienic, it has become a trend, and many are trying it as if it were a cultural eccentricity. Would you dare? The strawberry moon is a phenomenon that occurs when the full moon is at its closest point to Earth. Although many believe the name comes from its pink color, it's actually related to the strawberry harvest season. In Austria, you'll find the Schlossbergrutsche, or the Slide Graz, the world's tallest underground water slide. With a 210-foot drop and a 558-foot descent, it's the perfect attraction for adrenaline junkies. It's not just a ride, but an extreme underground experience. When vinyl-wrapped cars are exposed to intense heat, a curious effect occurs. Air bubbles form beneath the surface. This is because the material expands with high temperatures. The result is cars that look like inflatables on wheels. Cuban Eric Hernandez achieved an impressive world record in ball control. He kept the ball in play for over 3 hours without dropping it, while seated and with extra weight on his ankles. Manette Bailey, a 102-year-old woman, decided to celebrate her birthday in an unusual way by skydiving. From an altitude of 6,889 feet, she broke records as the oldest person to do so in the UK. Her bravery inspired thousands around the world. The stones we see on train tracks serve a vital function. They are called railway ballast and are used to absorb vibrations, keep the tracks aligned, and allow water drainage. Without them, the rails would deform under the weight of the trains. Tell us in the comments which of these facts blew your mind the most. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep throwing out mind-blowing facts.